Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Del. War Within launches in just less than 2 weeks at this point, at least the early access does, and that means there's a limited time left to get all our classes ready, and it looks like we've seen this week specifically hot fixes after hot fixes after hot fixes rolling in just about daily, and even sometimes a couple of hours apart from each other as they're trying to get our classes tuned and adjusted. And at this point, nobody's expecting any major class revamps and changes and new talents. At this point, it's all about trying to get the numbers as close to one another as possible. And one of the classes I've been seeing a couple of number changes is the class of Priest, with a handful of abilities buffed up from this last week's build of beta, or I guess this recent few days of updates beta, because not really last week's, it's just kind of been happening sporadically. But Priest with a couple of baseline abilities being amped up, which at first doesn't seem like a lot. However, if you combine the class of Priest, specifically Shadow Priest, together with one of the hero specs that saw huge improvements recently, you're creating an opportunity for Priest to potentially shine with an exciting synergy. And I really wanted to take a bit of a deeper dive at that synergy. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates on the War Within beta, or I guess with the release happening very, very soon, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So starting things off, we had a bunch of data mining this week for the beta in particular. In fact, we actually, as of today, have even more stuff that's being data mined. I am hoping we'll get a proper blue post, but it seems like they're really adding all these changes piecemeal, but maybe that's just how beta is going to be until the actual release of the expansion, as we're ending that development cycle very, very soon. But for Shadow Priest, recently, there are very, very basic abilities such as Mind Flay got buffed up, but also Mind Spike as well. Your filler abilities, the thing that you necessarily don't want to invest too much time into, you'll cut it off as soon as possible. Apparently they made Mind Flay deal 50% more damage, which is, I guess on its own, it's a lot of damage. I mean, ability doing 50% more damage is significant, but Mind Flay generally has been an ability that's so filler, as in you will literally cancel it and cast every other ability above it. Though, for Priest, they did end up improving the Mind Flay Insanity part. Surge of Insanity is a very common talent most Priests run in just about every single build. It is a part of every single Priest build. I almost feel like it should just be a passive, especially as well as Psychic Link. I guess in single target you wouldn't really want to pick up Psychic Link, but I feel like, why are these two even on talents? I feel like both of them should just be passive. Maybe even Misery should also be a passive. There's so many passive options for Priest, or I feel like they definitely could free up some of the talents. But Surge of Insanity does make Mind Flay Insanity, or Mind Flay, a better version because they made it happen so much quicker. All that damage has not been condensed, so instead of having a long channel of Insanity where you're staying there for a good bit trying to get all that damage out, instead, when you do have the Insanity version of it, it happens much, much quicker. All that damage condensed in a handful of seconds makes it much burstier than before. It is amazing. It is a huge quality of life improvement when it comes to Priest. Oh, just so much burstier. It's so much quicker. Plus, with Priest not being such a mobile class, you can just get all that channel out very, very quickly, really squeeze a lot of it out, and then you can start moving. I like this a ton. Normally, when it comes to Priest, I prefer Spike over Flay. I don't like the whole Flay channel. I'm really, really bad at clipping abilities or that channel, but Mind Flay Spike has been the no-nonsense option for me that I generally preferred. But after this change, I actually like Flay a lot more. I like the burstiness of the ability, and I feel like it fits the playstyle of a Shadow Priest much, much better. Speaking about Mind Spike, as well as Mind Spike Insanity, both of those got buffed up. Spike also saw a 50% damage buff. Same thing with Mind Flay Insanity. And also, Surge of Insanity version of Mind Spike Insanity, has gotten buffed by 15% on top of it. And Surge of Insanity already gives you a more powerful version of the base ability, but then the more powerful version is also buffed up by quite a bit too, making spikes even better. But also spikes that generate 12 Insanity instead of 8 Insanity per cast, which is huge. It makes Flay as well as Spike a little bit more even with one another. And ideally, I don't think they'll ever be able to make him completely even, but ideally I would like Flay and Spike to be as even to one another in terms of gameplay as possible. I normally like Spike, but I actually do prefer the new version of Mind Flay Insanity in particular. Both Spikes and Mind Flays now can accumulate up to 4 charges with Surge of Insanity. Normally, you can only bank up 2 charges, but now they're increased it from 2 to 4. This is a huge quality of life improvement because Priest rotation is very, very specific, and it's very proc based, and it's a lot of cooldown management. And this kind of change allows you to manage those procs and cooldowns better. Abilities like Mind Blast, those got to be on cooldown as soon as possible. You got Shadow Word Death in terms of executes, those got to be used immediately. So there's so many abilities that take priority, but also you have so many different cooldown based abilities that also have quite a bit of a priority also. And sometimes it just feels like you just have way too many procs, way too many cooldowns to manage, and figuring out what comes first, what comes last can be a bit of a mess, but getting you a little bit extra sanities that you can bank up in that bucket from a 2 to like a 3 and a 4 allows you to delay those abilities later and then still get the full value out of them later. I'm a huge fan because the priority, the DPS priority, the rotational priority for Shadow Priest can definitely sometimes be a bit of a mess. So this helps it out a lot. It makes the playstyle feel so much smoother. And this change also allows Shadow Priest to create some fantastic burst combos with the right setup. Surge Insanities and the Mindful Insanity, Mind Spike Insanity versions of these abilities, they do hit harder, not that much harder, until you pair it together with Archon. And Archon, last time we took a look at Priest, we mentioned Archon changes as well as some of the hero stuff with them a little bit here and there, but Archon has saw quite a significant amount of changes over the last few weeks. So this is a bit of a recap, but it essentially got much stronger, even though the playstyle is very passive. It plays around the ability of Halo, which you can make do actually a significant bit of damage overall, though. When it comes to in dungeon content, Halo can actually do quite a lot of damage for the entire dungeon. However, the main draw from Archon is not the Halo ability, but what can the Halo do for you? And that comes with a manifested power where Halo grants a surge of insanities. You can get multiple Halos back to back, so you'll be able to generate multiple charges of surge of insanity. But also Halo increases the damage of Mind Spike as well as Mind Flay insanities by 60%, making them even better and even burstier, turning a basic rotational ability into something that's significantly much more powerful. And I'm a big fan of something like this. We've seen that stuff with rogues before, like Outlaw rogues, like back in Battle for Azeroth with the one pistol shot Azeroth trait, now currently a talent called Greenskin. The talent basically allows your pistol shots, a very basic ability that normally deals like decent bit of damage but nothing significant, to deal more damage than a finisher in some cases, a rogue finisher that takes combo points when you get a certain setup or when you use certain abilities, and then you combine the proc together. And that pistol shot can really fire off like it's a big old blunderbuss. So this essentially allows Shadow Priest to have their filler ability become now a significant ability that deals significantly more damage in the right setup. And you can actually juice this ability quite a bit more, which I don't necessarily hate completely, because Archon has a bit of a gameplay hook actually. When you look at the actual design of Archon and some of the talents given, it's not the most interactive version of hero talents that we've seen in the past. Definitely not. But I think like the more I play with it, the more I actually like it, and the more I think there's a potential with it, because it does have a bit of a gameplay component behind it. It's not perfect, but you do have the ability to increase the damage of your Mind Flay Insanities. You could bank up a bunch of those Mind Flay Insanities all at the same time and have at least 4 of them ready to go in such a short notice. And then on top of it, you also have an ability where Halo not only grants you the procs of Mind Flay Insanities and Mind Spike Insanities, but also the Resonant Energy causes Halo to debuff the target, making them take 2% more damage from your abilities 5 times. So if you set it up correctly, you could potentially get your dots up on the target to make sure you have full mastery on them. And then as Halo expands and hits the target, they take additional damage from a Resonant Energy because the Halo expands out and comes back in. So then once you have yourself full stacks of your Resonant Energy, you could use your hardest hitting abilities during that window to get the most damage out into that target. And it kind of gives you like a burst opportunity, a burst window. So if you could bank up a bunch of damage for that burst window specifically, you can actually do a significant bit of damage. Sadly, nothing really crit here, but your abilities can hit a little bit harder during that very specific window, which I personally do like. It's a very little gameplay interaction, but it is something you can now track and work around and really get the most value out of. And with Archon, the Halo ability lighting up every single minute, so you have basically decent bursts that you can set up every minute. Either you could delay all of those procs of insanity and then use them once you hit full stacks, or you can start using them kind of weaving them in between, but maybe bank up a couple of procs, a couple of stacks of insanity once you hit the full stacks of resonant energy, and then you do that full damage. It really is noticeable, and your damage goes up by a significant amount. Priest, by any measure, is not a perfect class. Shadow Priest in particular, definitely not a perfect spec, but it does feel pretty good to play with Archon. That being said, Priest is definitely not a perfect class by any measure. And even this version of the Priest that we're going to be walking into with War Within, with Archon, with Void Weaver, with all these different tools, this is definitely not the strongest version of the class. I definitely want to make sure that everybody is aware. I'm talking about how fun Shadow Priest is in this specific moment, while also recognizing this is definitely not the strongest version of Priest we've seen from previous expansions. Shadow Priest players in particular, if you've been playing the class for a while, you know that your class is a little bit of a strange one. It has a bit of a jank to it, with some of your base abilities. And the priority system, and how some certain spells can feel like they have a pretty long cooldown but not that much of an impact. Yes, it necessarily doesn't really change too much in that regard, but there is a uniqueness in terms of what Archon can bring in, and some of these recent changes with the base buffs to some of your filler abilities, I think can allow for you to create some interesting synergy, which I found it personally kind of fun and exciting. Plus also Shadow Priest, I feel like there's no class like them. They have a very, very unique playstyle that weaves in dots and channels and big hit abilities and mad cooldowns and spells that function in a very different way than some of the other classes have, like Halo, as well as Torrent, as well as your DPs and the way you cleave with almost like a caster Blade Flurry cleave element. There's so many unique mechanics to play into, which I do enjoy, but yeah, the Archon playstyle in particular, at least with this current version of Priest that we have on the beta, I feel like actually I found quite a bit of fun and quite powerful at the same time. Flame Priest in particular, if you are playing around the Flame mechanic over the Spike mechanic, I feel like I enjoyed the Flame version a lot. It was quite a bit of fun. The damage is a lot smoother, and the faster cast of Mind Flame Insanity with the Archon setup, I feel like allowed me to have an easier time to find moments where I can at least plan around the use of mobility while still being able to focus on primarily outputting as much damage as humanly possible. Void Form is an ability that I really enjoyed, primarily for its mobility, but also Void Form is amped up by Archon. It's not the strongest version of Void Form, however. I feel like Void Form definitely in the previous expansions has been significantly more impactful, but with Archon you do have a bit of a burst window, plus the mobility from the instacast that comes with Wood Eruption, I feel like does help the Archon playstyle, which is kind of adverse to movement to some degree compared to Void Weaver, which actually integrates movement into as part of the class mechanics and class abilities. The Archon is a little bit more adverse to movement, which is not new for any Shadow Priest players, but combining it together with Wood Eruption for very big burst windows with high amounts of mobility and instacast did feel really good to play into. And I kind of like the playstyle of Archon and how you can do a little meaty setups where your Mind Spike Insanities and Mind Flame Insanities, Flame specifically, can actually have a significant bit of damage behind it. That being said, I also think there's a potential for Archon as well as Mind Spike ability to shine at some point in the future, though it's not nearly as easy for me to make it work. And I've tried it a couple of times. I definitely would need more time spent on the beta. With the beta probably ending very soon, I don't really know how much more time I'll really have with it, but I always thought there was maybe a potential for Mind Spike and Archon and this instantaneous burst damage gameplay that it offers, plus combine it together maybe with Dark Ascension, or you could even just go with Eruption. That's fine too if you want to have the biggest burst possible. I thought there was a lot of potential there, though it will probably have to play to a very crit-based playstyle. And with down Shadow Priest from the beta, it's recommended highly for you to invest most of your stats into haste, literally as much stats as you can, especially if you can craft some pieces of gear on your character just so you can get the stats, because all these items, like even if they're low quality, they still scale up in dungeons anyway, so as long as you get the right stat distribution, you're fine. So haste is heavily recommended, and afterwards mastery, because it's the most impactful stat by far when it comes to raw damage. So there's just not a lot of opportunity for you to really invest heavily into haste, even though I feel like there's a potential to maybe make a Mind Spike build plus with Archon and focus on big burst windows, because there's talents such as Mastermind, which increases the crit chance of Mind Blast, Mind Spike, Mind Flay, Shadow Word Death by 4% per stack, but also increase the damage of these abilities with 2 talent points and by 40%, so 40% more damage when they critically strike. Plus you have a little gem in the, well, I have mine in the neck, but some people have it in their helm slots if they crafted the primary stat gem that also grants you like an Algari gem critical effect damage increase on top of it. So it's like combining it together, you could potentially create like a crit burst damage build possibly, but yeah, I feel like if that build was viable and strong, I feel like somebody would have done it over on the beta as well. We see a lot of logs of priests constantly queuing dungeons, constantly uploading their info, and I feel like if somebody did figure out some kind of like a big spike build, I think the problem would have been playing it by now. I feel like there's plenty of players out there that have tried just about every single build out there, and I would love for something like this to potentially shine in the future, and I feel like the playstyle of Archon definitely could have maybe been a decent synergy with it. That being said, I also do want to recognize it feels like Archon, even when reading the actual tooltip for it, Archons are highly devout and deeply connected to the light and the shadow. Archons can be blessed from the higher beings to enter an ascended state, become an ultimate version of themselves. I do feel like they had an idea of what an Archon wanted to be. I don't think it's actually was going to be planned to be revolved around Halo. Just call it a hunch, but I feel like it was supposed to be like an ascended version of your major cooldowns like Dark Ascension or Void Form, and it has some mechanics where it's like sustained potency where you can extend the duration of some of those cooldowns just a little bit depending on your halos instead of having like a stronger version of healing and damage halo instead. So there was it feels like there was going to be a mechanic that was about priests ascending to another level or getting some major cooldown. I don't really know if they really were able to completely finish out the fantasy of them becoming like a full ascendant or anything, a proper Archon, if you will. So I wonder if that is something they'll end up working on and adjusting in the future, because I feel like the part of the hero talents is the functionality of them in terms of how they run in dungeons, how they run raid. Do they give you a significant damage increase or a healing increase? Do they offer conveniences or fix certain problems with the class? Those things are going to be there. But a part of the hero talents and what people were really excited about is the flavor of it, the thematics of it. And thematically, Archon, I feel like the gameplay and the abilities are fine, but they don't necessarily connect nearly as well. There's a disconnect with their actual description, and I feel like the design goals shifted quite a bit for the Archon, and I wonder if in the future they could potentially restore it to the original idea they had. But the current version of Archon, I actually kind of enjoyed it. Playing with it has been quite a bit of fun, and I was kind of surprised because Priest was a class that I wasn't really super invested into. As a class, Priest didn't really get a lot of changes, and I am hoping they'll get a bit of a refresher going forward in the future. I feel like at this point, the class probably needs some kind of a refresher, a couple of adjustments. But like I said earlier, like certain talents I feel like don't necessarily need to be on here, and there's also, it's another class that's bogged down by 2-point nodes all across the board, just about everywhere. So you are seeing limitations of what you can do with your talents, and I would like to see for Shadow Priest as well as Disgrace and Holy to get like the similar kind of treatment that we've seen with some of the other classes over their time span in the War Within beta. But with that out of the way, I do want to get you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on these recent buffs to Flay as well as Mind Spike? And what are your thoughts about the potential synergy between pairing a Shadow Priest together with Archon in order to achieve some of the best burst damage available? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. It would help me out tremendously to reach a wider audience. Also, join our Discord community. Link to that is in the description of every single one of these videos. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in the next one.